Good evening, I'm Judy Maggio. Tonight on Decibel, Texas women on the rise in record numbers.
There's gonna be a lot of women elected to office in Texas this go-round.
The opioid epidemic hits home.
Everybody probably knows someone in Austin that has died from an overdose.
What is the Hutto Detention Center? Who are the women there?
Finding help and hope for immigrants held in detention centers.
The vast majority of those women have no legal representation and no one really watching individually for their case and making sure they're okay.
Can we give you a hug? Yeah.
A little sweat.
Come on.
And the healing power of hugs.
I think that sometimes you just have to be with people.
We begin tonight with the Pink Wave, the historic number of women running for office in Texas. Many tell us they're riding that wave, hoping to level the playing field in politics.
I walked out the front door of the Capitol, and all you could see was a sea of people. Both estimates were well over 100,000 people showed up.
Oatmeal, Texas. It's an unlikely headquarters for a history-making march, but this hill country home is where Melissa Fierro rallied the troops through Facebook.
I was a grandmother sitting in Oatmeal, Texas, and ended up organizing with a lot of help from a lot of other people, the largest march in Texas history. So I think that women need to hear the story that people run for office. There's nobody super special that needs to run for office. You just have to have the desire.
Fierro says the momentum of the Women's March is fueling a political movement.
They realized that there was power in numbers and that there were numbers. You know, they weren't alone, and that everyday people can step up.
A record number of women are stepping up to run for office in Texas, both Democrats and Republicans. Annie's List reports 117 women have filed as candidates for state and local offices in the 2018 election. That's a 54% increase from 2016. On the national front, though women make up half the U.S. population, they hold only 20% of the seats in Congress, and only 38 of those spots are held by women of color. Considering the diverse field of women coming out of the woodwork to run for Congress, the face of politics is poised to change, and Texas could end a 22-year dry spell.
I first volunteered on a campaign in the 1996 election cycle for a woman named Olivia Udaley. It was my first taste of a congressional campaign. That year, 96, was the last time a new woman was elected to Congress.
Jennifer Sarver is a moderate Republican running for the District 21 congressional seat left open by the retirement of Lamar Smith.
The exciting thing is there are women on both sides of the aisle who are running in Texas. I think that's a good thing. We're half the population. Congress should start to look a little bit more like the population.
Sarver is a former member of the Bush administration who openly supported Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. She's a long shot in a crowded field of 18 Republicans in her March primary race, but she says the timing is right for more women to have a seat at the table.
We're only going to be treated equal if we start to have a level playing field. And so I think it's going to take a long time before we reach any sort of gender parity in politics, but the surge of women does give me hope.
MJ Hagar is a Democrat running for Congress in a reliably red district. She's hoping her military service will help her in a district that's home to Fort Hood. The Air Force veteran served 3 tours in Afghanistan. In 2009, she saved the lives of her passengers after her medevac helicopter was shot down by the Taliban, and she was awarded the Purple Heart. The military hero's memoir, Shoot Like a Girl, is now slated for the silver screen.
Awesome.
I hope she likes that.
Yeah, she will.
Well, it was good to meet you.
Yeah, and,
Thank you for the support.
Oh, absolutely.
Hagar also won a 2012 lawsuit against the U.S. Defense Department over its policy of excluding women from combat positions, a policy she called a career blocker for women in the military.
Legislation impacts culture. So legislating that women are second class or not as good sends a message and contributes to a culture where women get victimized, where they have high rates of sexual assault against them, where they are just treated as second-class citizens.
In the past, the hardest part of getting women elected to office was convincing them to run. But a pink wave of candidates like Sarver and Hagar is rolling across the country in 2018. And that makes one grandmother in Oatmeal, Texas, swell with pride.
There are going to be a lot of women elected to office in Texas this go-round. And I think that's going to make a difference in how our government works from local, city, and county level all the way up. Big changes are coming in 2018, but they're just the start, and we've got to stick with it. I think that's important.
2018 may be the year of the woman. Sadly, it's also the year we'll likely see more overdoses from opioid abuse than ever before. Public health officials call it the worst drug crisis in American history. Decibel's Blair Waltman-Alexan captures the local opioid epidemic through the people who are surviving it.
I have lost my daughter.
I never came to rehab. This is my first time.
I know she didn't know this drug that was prescribed by a doctor could end up killing her.
I gotta start my life out there and be a mother to that little girl because she needs a mom.
Hello, everybody. Alice, you're back. I knew I recognized you.
It's Monday night at the Christie Center, and Kathy Collins is getting ready to lead tonight's grief counseling. Tonight is an open meeting. Anyone can come in and talk about their loss, but recently Kathy saw the need for a specific group.
I saw that there was a great need for the overdose group just because of two factors. One being that so many people from our group were coming in with that specific loss. And I could tell that there were a lot of issues that they wanted to talk about. Our groups were getting so big that I thought, let's go ahead and open up a group twice a month for overdose loss.
The group has grown steadily since it started more than a year ago. One of the regulars is Leslie. Her daughter Marissa died of an accidental overdose in 2016.
When she passed away, we had no idea what happened. I kept thinking, my daughter had seizures. It was probably just a seizure that she had at night and ended up, not waking up. Okay, here's a good one right here. And I remember the day I got a call from the medical examiner's office, and she very clinically said, your daughter died of an overdose. And at that moment, I just said, no, my daughter did not die of an overdose. No, my daughter wouldn't take her seizure medicine because she was breastfeeding and she was afraid it would hurt her child. So how could she have died of an overdose? She was very sick that day and her head hurt a lot. So at some point, she was given somebody's prescription drug and ended up taking it. She ended up taking it, the drug, which was a perfectly, I suppose, legal, okay dose for whoever it was prescribed to. But that small amount ended up killing my daughter.
Marissa's death is one of thousands in the country's current opioid epidemic. Deaths from opioids have more than quadrupled nationally since the late 90s. Now, that rate has been lower in Texas. Opioid overdoses have roughly doubled in that same amount of time. Meth and heroin are still really popular because they're cheap and easy to find. But the numbers aren't telling the whole story here.
It's trickling down into the South. It used to be you'd say, do you know anybody who's died from suicide? Yeah. Well, now people go, oh yes, that person, my friend, overdosed.
Complicating the issue is bad data collection. Even though Texas records low numbers of opioid overdoses, it has the second highest total healthcare costs from opioid abuse in the nation. And 4 of the top 25 cities for opioid addiction are in Texas. Plus, there are huge swaths of the state without a medical examiner to confirm if people died of an overdose. And while there is a law that requires pharmacies to track opioid prescriptions, only about a third of prescribers in the state are signed up for the system so far.
There is an understanding that the data in Texas is not as good as I think everyone would like it to be, which then can lead to thinking that maybe this isn't as big a problem as it maybe really is. And so I think
Mike Mackert is the director for the UT Center for Health Communications. He's trying to convince more prescribers to sign on to this tracking system. Mackert says part of the problem is just how overdoses are tallied in Texas.
Data and stats might be showing one thing, but as we start to clean up different things, this is actually bigger. We might have been undercounting certain things. The state is starting to realize better data is going to show this is more of a problem in Texas than we might have thought a couple years ago.
The epidemic is also dovetailing with another major health problem here in Texas, the state's maternal mortality rate. This has been in the news a lot over the past year and a half. Even though there are issues with the data, the maternal mortality rate in Texas is still nearly double that of the rest of the country and ahead of the rest of the developed world. What you may not have heard is how much opioids have added to those numbers. This brings us to Dr. Ollier.
I'm the chair of the Department of State Health Services Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Task Force.
The task force was created in 2013 after medical experts noticed a spike in maternal mortality rates.
And we identified in that initial report drug overdose as the second leading cause of death. Opioids were the most common contributor to the drug overdose deaths. We think that this represents the problem that we're seeing nationwide. Our country right now is in the midst of what we call an opioid epidemic. We think that this is contributing to the higher maternal mortality rate.
Historically, our clinic has always been 70% males, 30% females. Well, guess what? As of right now, I can tell you we are at 62% female. So it really did a shift.
Briseida Cotois is the Director of Substance Use Treatment Services with the Center for Healthcare Services. She spearheaded an outpatient program in 2007 to help addicted mothers. But it wasn't started in response to the current opioid epidemic.
San Antonio has had a heroin problem for many years. So when the opioid crisis broke out nationwide, San Antonio had already been living it. We realized that there was a need for gender-specific treatment services, specifically women.
The hardest things, I think, is to be away from my family, my husband, especially that I was pregnant, really having a baby. But being here now, I think it's a good thing. I never came to a rehab. This is my first time.
Last year, they opened the NOS Residential Treatment Program. NOS stands for Neonatal Abstinence Syndrome. It refers to health complications that develop in the womb when the mother uses drugs. Alyssa's baby was not born with NOS, but she did use drugs during her pregnancy.
I was pregnant at the time, so I would tell myself, no, I can't use, but I would still use. Or I had that thought in the back of my mind, I want to get high. And I would try not to think about it so much, but it was always there, and I would get high. It was just an everyday thing. I was always sad, mad at the fact that I did use, if I did use that day. I just wasn't happy.
Alyssa is one of the 14 women in the residential program. They get counseling, parenting classes, medication-assisted treatment for their addiction, plus they can keep their kid with them as they get treatment.
Many of the women carry around a lot of guilt and shame of using during their pregnancy, so if baby gets fussy or baby starts to cry, they blame themselves. And so we just kind of reassure them that, baby's gonna be okay, baby is getting treatment, you're here, you're making the right choices. We see the healing in process.
Texas has taken some steps to curb opioid addiction. There's a law that clamps down on pill mills, which are pharmacies that shell out high amounts of painkillers. And the state now has an open prescription for naloxone, a drug that can stop an overdose. But efforts to expand successful programs like the ones in San Antonio have been slow. Only a handful of outpatient programs for addicted mothers exist across the state. And the NOS program is the lone residential treatment program for mothers in Texas.
I can tell you with significant amount of certainty that there are not enough resources. There are not enough services or programs out there to help. So, do I see the problem growing? Yes.
Oh, look, she said no.
Alyssa and Leslie will probably never meet. They live in different cities, lead different lives, but they both have a singular message. There is hope out there.
And that's what the Christie Center has shown me, is that there is no standard. Anyone can die of a drug overdose.
People are dying out there. There's a lot of girls that don't know about programs like this, and it's programs like this that helped me. It helped me a lot.
We're happy to report that Alyssa is now in the outpatient program and is reunited with her husband. You can find more information on the Mommies program at the Center for Healthcare Services website. In Texas, some immigrants on the road to freedom face a different type of hardship here. They're locked up in one of the state's detention centers, waiting for word on asylum. One ray of hope are the volunteers who become a lifeline to the outside world.
A lot of people say if they want to be here, then they need to do it the right way. I know people who have done it the right way. It takes years, it takes money. It's not so simple.
The way the program started was actually back in 2010. It's when the Hutto Detention Center first got changed over from a family detention center, and then they moved it to an individual all-women's asylum-seeking center. And so we started the visitation program in that moment to keep our eyes on the scene and have the women have a direct outlet to the outside world. What is the Hutto Detention Center? Who are the women there? There are about 300 volunteers a year who are trained. So when a volunteer is trained, they're matched with a woman for the duration of her stay. And that could be 9 months or 1 month.
So I'm here today to get orientated with grassroots leadership so I can go out to the Hutto Detention Center. I feel like reaching out and being able to go and talk to someone gives them an opportunity to just have a little bit more interaction with the world.
Some of the harshness of the detention center, those parts will really shock people.
My family is in Houston.
We do a piece where we're reading first-person testimonies from the women, and so the volunteers take turns reading them out loud. I'm going to give you the last one, and we don't have it written yet, but it's a real story. Hello, my name is Insis Bernal. I'm a human rights activist from Honduras.
Yo salí huyendo por la violencia que sufría en mi país. Me viajé a Guatemala, de Guatemala viajé a México y de México crucé el río a Estados Unidos. Cuando migración me agarró a mí en la frontera después de haber cruzado el río, me trasladaron para la detención de Hagar. Pues las condiciones ahí eran fatales, eran horribles. Yo estuve ahí 11 meses. Pues yo sufría mucho porque yo solo pasaba enferma de depresión, de ansiedad, porque nunca había estado detenida en mi vida, nunca. Nunca me imaginé que por venir a buscar un refugio, un asilo, era el castigo que me tocaba estar en ese tanto tiempo en detención. Nos merecemos una oportunidad. Porque si decidimos huir es porque no aguantamos la violencia, no tenemos autoridad, no tenemos quienes nos protejan. Porque si hubieran autoridades que nos protegieran, no huyéramos a otro país.
Okay. This is my first time to go out by myself. I expected kind of feeling awkward walking through the front door. You can't bring any like paper, pencils, or anything in, so you have to memorize everything that they say. So hopefully you have a good memory.
There are 512 women at Hutto at a time. If you have, 5 to 10 lawyers pro bono visiting for 500 women, the vast majority of those women have no legal representation and no one really watching individually for their case and making sure they're okay. And so these volunteers play an essential role.
First and foremost, I hope that she will walk away with the feeling that she's not alone. Said, oh, is this the person you're looking for? She was released on the 18th. So, unfortunately, we don't know what released means. So she could have been released back to where she came from, or she could have been released and got asylum. So here's to hoping she got asylum. And I tried to get a hold of grassroots leadership to see if possibly there's someone else I could visit while I'm here. And if not, it's not that far to go. So.
People volunteer in many different ways. One Austin man is on a mission to share the healing power of hugs. It's a small act of kindness, but it can reap big benefits. Decibel's Angela Maldonado embraced Free Hug Day in downtown Austin.
My friend Paul Normandin gives the best hugs. Every year, he and a rotating group of volunteers spend 8 hours on a street corner in downtown Austin, passing out free hugs.
Can we give you a hug? Ah, yeah. A little sweat. Come on. What's a little sweat between friends?
Could I take his tips and hug with the best of them?
Well, Hug Day came about because we were sitting around, a bunch of people who were taking improv classes, and we were talking about where we wanted to go with our improv. And I told them what I wanted to do, which was stand on a corner with a sign that said free hugs. Just being present with somebody in physical contact with them for 20 seconds and feeling that release of being present with someone. It is life-changing. Not looking around or wishing you were somewhere else or padding out of the hug.
You too, here, guys.
Yeah, invariably, every single year, someone will give me a hug, and in the hug, I will feel them collapse. I would feel them fall into me, and in that moment, they will either start crying, or you can feel the emotional release just leaving their body. And I kind of feel it, I feel that emotion coming into me, and that's,
Thank you.
There was this woman who came up and she had 2 children with her. And she gave me a hug and she just started crying. And I wasn't gonna let her go. I wasn't gonna let her go till she till you feel that person start to pull away. And she just hugged me for probably 30, 40 seconds and just cried the entire time. And I don't know what her deal was or what was happening to her, but I was there with her. I think that sometimes you just have to be with people.
Finally tonight, I want to thank all of you for so warmly embracing our work here at KLRU's Decibel. We're dedicated to amplifying real issues and real people in a meaningful, thoughtful way. This is our new studio that allows us to do weekly Facebook Live interviews, along with our Capital Coffee Talk show, featuring timely political topics from different perspectives. Every week we talk about mugs, because it's Capital Coffee Talk, and I had to bring
Capital empty mug.
videographer Joe Roach's mug, because I saw on his desk, it's apropos for today. I voted early. Spider-Man
I thought
voted
maybe you were
early.
Spider-Man.
No, I left my Spider-Man costume at home today.
Marching feels good.
All those activities feel good, but the action is voting. That's where it matters. And typically, as I said earlier, in our elections, too few people vote.
Younger people right now are asking for a measure that can control the actual firearm. They're looking for magazine capacity restrictions. They're looking for restrictions on the AR-15. When I talk to law enforcement, they're hearing a completely different message. What they're worried about is the aggregate crime. And the way they see it is that 60% of the guns used in crimes are handguns. Only 13% are rifles. So when they kind of look at the day-to-day shootings, that's their kind of big priority.
I think a lot of people tend to wait until the big election and then are faced with choices that they don't necessarily like and feel like, what's the point of this? But the truth is you have to start now. You have to be engaging year-round so you can actually have a say in shaping who those candidates are.
And you can start at the local level. Facebook is also the place we premiere our stories. If you like tonight's Decibel special, be sure to like our Decibel ATX Facebook page to share your thoughts and ideas and be part of community conversations. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.